Welcome to the Goddess Conference Conversations. In this space, we will connect with interesting personalities, presenters and artists from our international community and chat about the upcoming conference's topics and themes.
Welcome everybody to Goddess Conference Conversations, and right now we have the beautiful Annwyn Avalon here with us, and she is in a very special space actually. She's here in Glastonbury and she is now the custodian, the owner of the cottage of 𝗲𝗏𝗋𝗄𝗏, so that's a beautiful place to come from to talk to you. So Annwyn, we're very happy that you are part of the Goddess Conference this year. I've seen you this year in full action at 𝗚𝗏𝗿 at the White Spring, so we'll probably talk about a little bit about that, but just ask you to introduce yourself properly to everybody.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you, Marion, so much for having me and for accepting my proposal to teach at the Goddess Conference. It's such an honor. And the theme was well maidens, and I was so excited about that, like healing and well maidens, like that's right up my alley because I am a water priestess. Sometimes I also identify as a water witch, definitely an Avalonian. I remember years ago, my high priestess and teacher was like, you know, you're an Avalonian, right? And I was like, yes, what's an Avalonian? And then the next decade plus, I would kind of begin to unravel what that really meant. I'm also an author. I have 3 books. My first one was Water Witchcraft, Magic and Lore from the Celtic Tradition. The Way of the Water Priestess, Entering the World of Water Magic is my second. And then my brand new book that just came out this year, in March, actually. So it's a brand new baby, is The Celtic Goddess Grimoire. All 3 of them really dive deep into the practices of the landscape, the waters, the folk practices, the ancient practices of the Celts and the British landscape, British Welsh landscape. Celtic Goddess Grimoire actually covers a lot more than just the Brythonic. Actually, I guess as I'm sitting here saying this, all 3 of them cover not just the Welsh and British landscape, but the entire landscape that was once lived in and connected to the ancient Celtic people, and then of course their descendants. But one thing that really connects all 3 books is water, because that has been my passion, and you really cannot get Avalon without water, because Avalon is so infused with water, or water is infused with Avalon. It's in the mix, you know. And other things about me, I run the Water Priestess Confluence, the 9-month water magic course. I write the 𝗲𝗄𝗏𝗏 blog, The Water Witch. I have a YouTube channel about water. My Instagram's all about water. Everything is water. Before I kind of got on that path, I was diving into art. I have a BFA in fine art, but then also I have a BA in, BS, Bachelor's of Science, in anthropology. And my going into anthropology really helped me to begin to research and uncover all of these things that were showing up in my life that were so magical. And yeah, anyways, that's a really long introduction. I didn't mean to be so long-winded, but
it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating. So how did you, because you're now very involved with the White Spring, so how did you come involved? I mean, it is, of course, a very important water place, but how did you come involved with the White Spring?
So that began 12 years ago, probably even a little bit earlier than that. But going back to my high priestess saying, you know, you're Avalonian, right? And I said, yes, what's that? And she said, I don't teach about Avalon. That's not my path, but I know someone who does. And so she sent me to study with Mara Freeman, who is also one of the presenters this year.
Yes.
And she really introduced me through her Avalon Mystery School to what Avalon was. And as soon as I started taking her courses, I just like dove in, and I knew that that was like, it sang in my bones and in my blood. And
Yeah.
I'm sure so many of you resonate with that, because sometimes there's not words to put to it. It's feelings. It's just like, yes, this is it. This is what I've been seeking. And so that was in around actually 2010 is when I began studying with her. And about 2 years later, I was fully immersed in it. And I decided to take a pilgrimage to Glastonbury, to here. And of course, I came for the 𝗟𝗟𝗃 because that's so popular, and that's like what you can find online. And of course, 14 years ago, the internet was not what it is now. So there was limited information. I knew that the White Spring existed, but I didn't understand what it was. And so I remember walking up Wellhouse Lane and just being like, I know there's another spring, and I'm looking for it. And the doors to the side were open, and I walked through, and it changed my life. It just completely changed my life. I just remember like kind of just standing there like what is this? I made my way into one of the shrines, and I sat there and I meditated, and I got this message to begin teaching about water magic. And I made every excuse to not.
Yeah.
I thought I wasn't good enough. Who am I to do it? And this is kind of when my journey then back to university and getting my anthropology degree came in, because I knew that if I was going to teach about this, I needed to learn how to research. And so I started studying anthropology. Funny enough, at that time, I actually thought that I was going to be working with plants and like the intersection between like humans and plants and how like we're connected to them. But then like the water just came in like a flood. And then I went back to that message of like, teach about the water magic. I finally stopped resisting, and I taught my first water magic class at the Arizona Goddess Conference in 2013. And not long after that, my 9-month water magic course was born. And then a few years later, my first book, Water Witchcraft, was birthed. And that brought me back to Glastonbury for another pilgrimage, this time with the Sisterhood of Avalon, which is run by Gina, who's also, I believe,
Yes, Jenna, yeah.
Yep, she's amazing. And her work has been really influential. And I'm a member of the Sisterhood of Avalon. And yeah, anyways, I actually started teaching on the conference circuit. Well, I guess the Arizona Goddess Conference is also on the conference circuit, but like I started kind of getting out of my local community, and I taught at the 𝗍𝗲𝗋 festival in 2016 on the cult of sacred springs and holy wells, and so you can see how it's just all woven. Back on track though. So I come back to Avalon for another pilgrimage. And I go back into the White Spring. This time we have a private booking, and I go back into meditation, and I just get hit with this huge message of it's time for the next book, and that's The Way of the Water Priestess. So that is born, and I promise that I'm going to come back like the next year, and COVID hits.
Yeah.
And I can't. And so I wait and I wait and I wait and I wait, and finally I can come. So I come back. This time it's in 2022, and actually May of 2022. So exactly 2 years ago, I come back, and we have another private booking for me and just a couple of people that I was traveling with. And this time I'm like ready for the message. I'm
Yes,
so I go into the shrine again, and I sit down, and I'm like, I know what you want. You want me to write another book, right? Spirit was like, no. You're gonna, like, the message that I got was, you're gonna move to Glastonbury before 2023.
Whew.
And I was like, impossible. I spent the next 2 days fighting with Spirit. Spirit would say, you're gonna move here, and I'm gonna be like, this reason, this reason, this reason, like, here's all the reasons this can't happen. And then those reasons would fall away, or there would be an answer. I didn't like the answers, but I would get the answer. Oh, my son is still in school. I'm not ready. I had planned on moving here to the UK, but the plan was that in 2025 I would begin my preparations.
I know how that works, yeah.
Right? But no, messages was coming in, right? Just so like, you're gonna move here. So I decide that I have misinterpreted the message and that I am just supposed to visit again before 2023. Well, on that trip in May, exactly 2 years ago, I collide with somebody that is kind of one of the sacred stewards of the White Spring. And I have this meeting that's just this passing, right? Like, I had decided that morning that I was tired, that I was not going to get out of bed. I was going to skip breakfast, and there was only 5 minutes left before the kitchen closed anyways. But Spirit somehow drugged me out of bed, knocked me down the stairs, and I stumble into the breakfast room just like all disheveled with 5 minutes to spare, and I meet this woman. And I have on my blog a whole interview series about interview with a water priestess, where I do interviews with women who are connected to water, and I talk about their work, and I get to highlight them and share them with the world. And I was like, I need to interview you. So we exchanged phone numbers. I almost missed my destiny by 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was wild. So the summer goes, and I'm still getting this message that I'm going to move to Glastonbury, and I'm just still fighting it. And I finally decide I have to go back. So I come back the last week of August, first week of September of 2022. And all summer I had played phone tag with this woman. And I'm back, right? I'm back in Glastonbury. I text her when I land in London, and I'm like, by chance, will you be around so I can interview you? And she's like, yes, actually, I'm here for, like, we just had another like little overlap. So getting a long story short here, I go over to her place and I start interviewing her. And 3 hours later,
Yeah.
I don't get the interview. The interview never happens. She interviewed me somehow, and we were plotting, like hatching a plan to purchase Chalice Orchard, which is 𝗲𝗏𝗋𝗔𝗻𝗄's old place. And I still was like, this is impossible. Like, it's not actually going to happen. And then the property was going to auction, and we put in a bid, and it was accepted. And all of a sudden it's mid-October, and I'm packing my house, selling my beautiful 2-acre farmhouse that I have just spent like 5 years restoring, with this beautiful creek and all of these gardens. And I had chickens, I had peacocks, I had all of this like just this like beautiful place. And I sold it. We sold it, and we used the equity to put into the property here, and we closed. And I still was like, this is not going to happen. And 45 days later, I was on an airplane with 2 suitcases.
Yeah.
And then, interestingly enough, last year during the Goddess Conference, I was unloading a shipment of my belongings. So that's a bit of a long story of how I got here. But that is really important for answering your question, which is, how did I get involved at the White Spring? So it was already like such an impactful part of my life. It had changed my life so many times. So I get here, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just living in this house by myself. My husband and my son and they're not in Glastonbury and Avalon yet. And I just walk over to the White Spring, and I'm like, can I volunteer? Like, this place has given me so much. Can I volunteer? And I just started out as a keeper, just started keeping. And then spirit just kept moving and moving and moving, and things shifted and things move. And the ceremonial custodian that had been the ceremonialist for years decided to step back in the fall. And we were kind of sitting around the table, and we were like, what do we do now? And I was like, well, I have been doing like large rituals I did the Pagan Pride Day I did Oregon Pagan Pride Day a couple of years in a row. I did the Phoenix Pagan Pride Day a couple of years in a row. I've hosted the Mermaid Parade opening ritual, which is like 1,000 mermaids. And so I was like, I have the skills, like, and I would be happy to do it so that we can actually continue having ceremony. And everyone looked at me and was like, good, let's do it. And I was like, okay.
Okay. That's why I had to be here.
Okay. Yeah, it's this whole thing has just been this like major like unraveling of just spirit putting me in the right places at the right time, and like just peeling all these layers and being like, surrender, surrender, surrender. And every time I do, it's like, great, thanks for surrendering. Here's the next phase.
Yes.
And so I never set out to do this. I honestly, it wasn't even on my radar. I was just so honored to be able to sweep the floors and change candles and just help at the spring, because it had given me so much already. And so when those opportunities for me to give back started opening up, I was like, yeah. And then here we are.
It's so interesting because there's a lot in your story that I recognize, and I'm sure others recognize as well. For me, it's like, it's me, it's Bridget as a goddess, saying, okay, you have to do this, and then you have to do that, and then and then people come on your path, and you have coincidental meetings or bumping into people, and then the next thing happens. It's yeah, I think that's really how that works, really, and you work with water, so when you're kind of in that flow, and there's no, there might be resistance in you, but actually the flow is there. You just have to jump in and surrender and then you're off, kind of thing. So yeah, it's beautiful story. Wonderful, thank you. Can I ask you about in the conference, you're going to talk about the work with the well maidens, and we of course are going to have this beautiful, we're going to have a water healing ceremony in 𝗤𝗏𝗏 combined with the White Spring, and so just see how do you feel the goddess of healing, which is our theme, of course. How do you feel the goddess of healing and the goddess in the White Spring? How does she manifest for you?
Okay. Ooh. So yes, the theme is healing, and there's a lot of teachings this year around the well maidens. And there's going to be, I think, different kind of lenses and views on them. And it's interesting because I didn't know that was going to happen, but my work with Water Priestess training, I have my little immersion, and then after my immersion is my course that's called the Well Maidens. And it's about restoring the wasteland, not just within ourselves, but the physical bodies of water on this planet. So my work takes a lot of activism, water activism, and really looking at that lens of the well maidens as guardians of the springs and guardians of the water, but also looking at their story in relation to the modern world and how we see the kind of the evil king from the story. Really, he parallels a lot of what's happening with some of these corporations and the pollution of the water and kind of the destruction of the water. And so so yeah, so my talk is going to go that way, and a little bit into that, like we can become sacred stewards of the water. But the well maidens have always been such a big part of my path. When I first started, even before Avalon really started coming through, it was the water that came through. And it was always these groups of watery women that would come to me, and they would come almost like a collective within my dreams, within my meditations, my vision journeys, my journeys into the other world. I would be met by these watery women in this like little collective, and I really started diving into that, like, who are you? Is this just like a random group of women? Are you just a random group of water spirits? Like, how does that, who are you really? And it was lake ladies and 9 maiden groups and well maidens and the spirits of the well. From the well maiden stories, we know that the well maiden were the voices of the well. And, as modern day priestesses, we can be voices for the water in that same way.
Yeah.
And so really, they've been with me for so long. And there are a couple of spirits I know that are very responsible for helping to get me here. And one of those is a group of well maidens, because just being a keeper at the well, and anyone that's been in there, that there is there's so many spirits. It's not just a single presence that you feel. There's many different presents. And oftentimes I will be walking. It was so funny. When I first started, I would go on a walk up Well House Lane. And I wasn't, sorry, when I first started keeping, reference time here, I would go on a walk up Well House Lane, like in the morning. And as I would walk by the well, the spring, I would hear voices on the inside.
Yeah.
And I would get a little bit like, who's at the spring? We're not open. And I'd look, and the locks were still on the gates. And so I kind of like peek in and be like, is there someone in there? And it's the well maidens. It's the water spirits. You can hear them playing. You can hear them singing. I'm sure
I've heard that, yeah, definitely.
this, right? So I think I've got a little bit off track here, but yeah, so the well maidens, they're partially responsible for bringing me here, and that connection with the water and with the spring it's so important. And it's not just within our small group. It's not, or what am I trying to say? It's not just within Glastonbury. These well maidens are connected to all sacred springs, all sacred wells, and they can be accessed everywhere. I just happen to be connecting with them here. They've got work that they want me to do, so I'm doing it. But I was working with them at a sacred spring in Oregon. There was a little well. It was actually real similar to the Chalice well, where it has a high iron content.
Okay.
And I was going to that well and working with them there. And so these wells become portals into these watery realms. And so you can connect with the well maidens anywhere.
Yes.
They're just really potent here in Avalon.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure I really feel that they will come through, especially in our water ceremony, which will be on the Wednesday evening of the conference. So yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for your time. It was really nice to get a little bit know your story and your connection with the well maidens when you're going to talk about. I liked the way also for the water activism, which is so needed. Especially here in the UK at the moment, but everywhere in the world, really, the waters are the lifelines of the earth. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to hear more of your wisdom in the Goddess Conference. So thank you very much for your time, Annwyn, and looking forward to seeing you in the summer.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This interview was conducted by Marion Brigantia.
Join us this year for the 29th Glastonbury Goddess Conference, a joyful gathering of goddess-loving people, a 6-day in-person event in Glastonbury Avalon, running from Tuesday 30th of July to Sunday 4th of August 2024, with the fringe event starting from Sunday 28th of July. This year the theme is the Goddess of Healing. It's our maiden year, the first of a new 5-year cycle. International presenters, transformative workshops and experiences, deep ceremonies on the sacred land of Avalon, community, art, fun and love for Goddess. Let your healing journey begin this year. Join us for the Glastonbury Goddess Conference, Goddess of Healing. There are so many options to participate. Full conference tickets, weekend tickets, day tickets. Find what suits you best and get your ticket now at 𝗏𝗏conference.com. Blessed be.